without further ado, Mr. David Salyers.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, I got to tell you, it's an honor to be with you tonight. Matt and I have gotten to know each other a good bit, and he talked about the theme for tonight, that he really wanted to take things to the next level. And I think don't all of us want to take things to the next level in our business, in our life, in our families, all that. That's what we want to talk about tonight, is leveling up, taking things to the next level. And as I think about that, I think about a 21-year-old kid on the University of Georgia campus. When I was graduating, I graduated on a Saturday morning, and I started with Chick-fil-A 4 hours later, 4 hours after college graduation. Let me tell you what that 21-year-old kid was thinking. I thought it couldn't get any better than to go out, graduate from school, make as much money as I could, as fast as I could, and retire as early as I could. My goal was to retire by age 35. I said, if I could retire by age 35, nothing could be more remarkable than that. That was the level. I mean, if you had said, if we were playing a game, that was like the highest level I could think of at the time. So that's what I was thinking when I arrived at Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A at that time, it wasn't a startup, but it was close. We were in a converted air freight warehouse, about a third the size of this, maybe 25% the size of this. Like the front end of this room would have been the warehouse. They had run out of room in the warehouse, so they cut a hole through the wall, pulled up a mobile home, and my first office was in a mobile home attached to a little tin roof warehouse. That was Chick-fil-A at the time. And little did I know, it didn't look like a very, exciting beginning. Like if my goal was to make as much money as I could, as fast as I could, sitting in a mobile home attached to a warehouse didn't look like a very good start on that. But what was interesting was, instead of finding the job I could retire from early, which was the level that I wanted to get to, I found something that today I would tell you is 1,000 times better than that. Something that as a 21-year-old kid, I couldn't have even imagined existed. Something I would have said isn't possible. You know what I found instead of the job I could retire from early? I found the job I wouldn't want to retire from. See, that thought had never crossed my mind, that there could be a job you wouldn't want to retire from. That didn't make any sense to me at the time. But now in looking back, imagine how much better it is to get to that level where you have the job you wouldn't want to retire from. Think about this. If my goal was to retire by age 35 and I couldn't wait to get to 35 to stop doing what I'm doing, what does that tell you about the goal, about how much you're enjoying what you're doing if your goal is to stop doing it as soon as possible? And it begs the question, if you could retire by 35, what would you do afterwards? Are you just going to sit around and watch Netflix the rest of your life? So I think that the greatest satisfaction, joy, rewards come in the context of creating value for other people. That's what I experienced. And Truett Cathy modeled that for me. Truett was almost like a second father to me. In many ways he was. I was almost like a member of his family. The staff was so small. I used to go on vacation with his family, and he was much like a second father to me. And he role modeled this job you wouldn't want to retire from. I remember when Truett was in his 80s, I'd go up to his office. I'd say, Truett, what are you still doing here, man? Your 401k fully funded. Why are you here? You know what he'd tell me? He'd say, why would I stop doing something I love this much? And he would say, if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. Wouldn't it be great to spend the rest of your life and never work another day in your life? That's what Matt wants for you. That's why I'm here. I got other things I could have done tonight, but when Matt calls and when I hear his heart and what he wants for you, I said, let me in on it. I want to be part of this. So what I want to tell you is a little bit about that Chick-fil-A story and a little bit about some of the things I learned along the way that might help you find the job you wouldn't want to retire from. Might help you get to that next level, not only in your business, but in your life. That's what we want to talk about tonight. Now, the starting point is to realize what's fascinating to me is 80% of what we do at Chick-fil-A is exactly the same as what our competitors do. We buy land, we build buildings, we serve food, we clean bathrooms, we clean tables. We have cash registers, we have drive-thrus. All these things exactly what our competitors do. My guess is 80% of what you guys do is exactly what all your competitors do. But the other 20% of what we do at Chick-fil-A, the other 20% of what you do, that's the part that makes all the difference. The 80% makes you competitive. That 20% that's different gives you a competitive advantage. And if we want to take it to the next level, we got to focus on that 20% that differentiates us, that takes us to a different level than those we compete against. So let me give you a sense of just how significantly different Chick-fil-A is from those we compete against. The fast food business, arguably, well, first of all, it's not a very glamorous business, is it? You know, how many of you grew up saying, one day I hope I can work for a fast food restaurant? You know, that would be like my dream to do that. No hands go, my hand wouldn't go up either. That's almost the miracle of this thing, is that Chick-fil-A doesn't exactly operate in the most sexy, fancy, high tech, or we're not solving, curing cancer, or, creating some high tech company. It's kind of a bare bones kind of business. And yet we've created a business that gets incredible results. We're in a business known for turnover. Fast food is known for turnover. We're talking, when we were coming in here, the average turnover in fast food for employees, 500% a year. 500% a year. The turnover at the manager level, the people who run the restaurants, 50% a year, meaning every 6 months it's turning over. That's the norm in the industry we compete in. By contrast, the turnover we'll start with the Chick-fil-A home office. We prefer to talk about retention rate. How many are we retaining? You know what the retention rate is at the home office? 97%. Turnover 3%. You know what the retention rate is of our Chick-fil-A operators? 97%. In an industry known for turnover. Even at the team member level, where the turnover in our competitors is 500% a year, it's 50%. Now, even that is a little tricky because 70% of our workforce are teenagers who are going on to do other things. We kind of know that when we hire them, but 50% is still pretty good, and we'll get more into that a little later. But here's another fascinating thing. Do you realize never, ever has Chick-fil-A had a year where sales were less than the year before? Not once. Not one time. It's an industry where we've constantly had sales growth. But here's what's really fascinating to me. If you were to look at the competition in fast food, there are about 200 major competitors that we competed against, 200 chains that we compete against. Of those 200 chains, if you took the average volume for an individual fast food chain, anyone want to guess what the average volume is, what the restaurant, fast food restaurant chains do, the average restaurant would do? Anybody want to take a guess? And I am going to pay for performance. I've got a pocket full of free Chick-fil-A sandwiches. So now all of a sudden, I knew this would get some volunteers going. What do you think the average Chick-fil-A, or not the average Chick-fil-A, the average fast food? 1.5? It's $700,000, but we'll give you for consolation prize for playing. $700,000. So we're in a $700,000 a year business. Now, you were close on one of our competitors. McDonald's is arguably the best in our business. We have a lot of respect for McDonald's. They don't call it the golden arches for nothing. They're kind of the gold standard of the business. You know what the average McDonald's did last year in a $700,000 business? How about $2.6 million? $2.6 million in a $700,000 business. That's pretty good. That's really good. That's more than 3 times, almost 3.5 times the average. Now, of those 200 locations, most 199 of them look at the day Sunday, and they come to the conclusion, good day to be open. Exactly. And we're going to give you 2 sandwiches because that's a really important answer right there. They think Sunday is a good day to be open. And I grew up in a family. My brother's an attorney. My dad was an attorney. And so we love to argue about things. I'd love to be the attorney to make the argument we should be open on Sunday. And if I was the attorney to make the argument we should be open on Sunday, here's what I would tell you. Sunday is the single best day in the restaurant business to be open. Think about your own behavior. Probably most of you go out to eat more often on Sunday maybe than any other day. And the facts would bear it out. If you just looked at statistically the revenue percentage that most restaurants do on Sunday, it's the largest day by a large margin. So it'd be really smart to say, Yeah, Sunday's a good day to be open. Maybe even the best day. You can make the argument it's the best day to be open. But Chick-fil-A, oddly, curiously, looks at Sunday and says, we think that's a good day to be closed. Who said that first? Yeah. Who said it loud? Okay, right over here. All right. Good day to be closed. I'd also love to be the attorney to make that case, because I've seen what that does. But it's hard to picture that, isn't it? It's very counterintuitive. How could you make the argument that's a good day to be closed? But if I were to make the argument that's a good day to be closed, here's what I would present to the judge. I'd say, Judge, can I approach the bench? And I'd say this. Okay, the fast food business, $700,000 business, McDonald's, best in category, $2.6 million. Chick-fil-A closed 52 more days than any of the other 199 competitors. And it's 52 of the best days to be open. Judge, would you like to take a guess at what the average volume at Chick-fil-A, and we're almost at the end of the year, so I can kind of project what it's going to be this year. You want to take a guess what the average Chick-fil-A will do this year in a $700,000 business? 52, keep in mind, 52 days closed more than our competitors.
It's like 1.5?
He said 1.5. How about, keep going up, yeah.
I say 3.2.
3.2.
4.5.
4.5.
I'm just going with
5. Here, we got a lot of participants. We're going to get everybody participating, but nobody's gotten it right. Whoever gets it right. 6? No, but thanks for playing. Who said 6? Thanks for playing. Who said 6? 6? No, now you get it. How about $7 million? 10 times the industry norm. 10 times the industry norm. This year is what they're trying to do in the middle of a pandemic. 10 times the norm. Wow, that's next level, isn't it? That's next level. But it didn't happen overnight. Almost Matt's point. You know, when I first started at Chick-fil-A, it looked nothing like that. Remember, I'm in a mobile home attached to a warehouse thinking, this is not a good situation. I was fighting the roaches to see who's going to eat my lunch. But what happened is gradually over time, after a lot of watering and fertilizing, this happened. It was not an overnight, it was an overnight success story, 40 years in the making. But here's what I would tell you. First 15 years of my career, at any point in time, the way our operators work is they get half the profit of the store that they run. So they live to help make profit. Well, half of them, about 30% of them at any point in time, no profit. Some of them went 4 or 5 years, no profit. But they kept at it. They kept at it. They kept at it. Nowadays, if you become a Chick-fil-A operator, oh my goodness, I don't even want to tell you. Some of our operators make more income than our competitors make in revenue, if you can believe that. So, but it happened over time. So how did it happen? And what are some of the things that what are some of that 20% of what Chick-fil-A does that makes 80%? We're going to get into that exact issue. But let me tell you about a few of the things. If we had all night, I could tell you lots of things, but I'm going to tell you about 3 of them tonight with the time that we have. But here's what's interesting. All 3 of the things I'm going to tell you were born in a time like the one we just went through. See, what's interesting, what's counterintuitive is challenging times like the ones we were just going through birth some of the greatest ideas. When you go through a pandemic like we're going through, it gives the opportunity to reevaluate what you're doing, reevaluate how you're doing it, and reimagine what to do. So all 3 of the things I'm about to tell you about were all born during a year that looked like this one. Okay, so the first one was caused by the marketing department. I spent almost all my career, 35 of my 37 years at Chick-fil-A were in the marketing department. 2 years I went to operations. And then they realized I was not a good operations guy, and they made me go back. But early in my career, the marketing department went about $1 million over budget and put the entire company in great jeopardy because the promotion went just a little too good that year. So the company was in a hard financial situation. The senior leadership team went on a retreat. And the idea was we're going to go spend 2 days figuring out how are we going to get out of this. Dan Cathy started with this question. Instead of starting with what we needed to do, you know, have you guys ever heard of a guy named Simon Sinek? Some of you guys heard of a guy named Simon Sinek? He wrote a book called Start With Why. Well, Dan Cathy was starting with why well before Simon Sinek had that thought. It may have been before he was born, I don't know. But Dan said, why are we in business? Why are we here? That was the question that the team started with. Spent 2 days talking about why we're in business. And instead of coming back with a plan to get out of all this, like how and what we're going to do, they came back with why we need to do it. And that 2-day retreat birthed what's now known as the corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A. The corporate purpose. And the corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is this: to glorify God through all we do by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us and a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. That was what they came back with. And let me tell you, that corporate purpose is the cornerstone. It's the foundation of everything you see that's made Chick-fil-A successful. It all goes back. That is the root idea behind a lot of Chick-fil-A success. It's the reason a crazy company would close on Sunday when everyone else is staying open, because they felt like that honors our corporate purpose and it honors our people. And there are things more important in life. Notice there's nothing in here about selling chicken sandwiches, because we think there are things more important in life than selling chicken sandwiches. Chicken sandwiches are just a means to a more important end. But the corporate purpose was born during a challenging time when we almost went out of business. You know what's fascinating? They came back with a corporate purpose. Everybody got together, or got to work on the what and the how. The next year, 46% same store sales increase at Chick-fil-A. 46%. Same store sales increase. That's like without any new stores. Across the board. Unbelievable. All right. The next time I want to tell you about was in the early 90s. In the early 90s, there was a little company up in the Northeast called Boston Chicken at the time. Had 13 locations in the Northeast. All of a sudden, they decided they wanted to get big real quick. So they had some investors that came in and did some private equity, and then they ended up going public. And almost overnight, Boston Market, this little 13-unit chain, was as big as Chick-fil-A almost overnight. And for the first time in Chick-fil-A's history, we had a competitor that was really legit. You know, they had quality chicken. They were fast food. They were really legit in terms of the market that they were going after. And they changed their name from Boston Chicken to Boston Market, and you guys have probably all heard of them. Well, here's what's fascinating. At that time, they were not only on the cover of every restaurant magazine, they were on the cover of every business magazine. Forbes, you know, you name it, Business Week. What are some other good business magazines? Yeah, Inc. magazine, all these. They were been on the cover of, and secretly, a lot of Chick-fil-A executives were investing in their stock because it was like the thing to invest in. It'd be like Tesla now or something like that. It was like the big thing that everyone was investing in. Now, for the first time, I saw our executive team get really nervous. So Dan Cathy, who is Truett Cathy's oldest son, he is now the CEO of the company, and since Truett passed away, he's now kind of the chairman of the whole thing. Well, he got real excited that we needed to get bigger faster. So he went on a trip to New York to explore how can we grow bigger faster like Boston Market was doing. And we looked at borrowing a bunch of money. We looked at IPOs. We looked at venture capital, all the different ways that you could get a big influx of cash to grow faster. And he came back to report on it. And this marked my career. I'll never forget. We're at a big long table, and Dan was at one end of the table, and he had fire in his eyes, and he was reporting back on all these things he'd learned in New York and how we could get bigger faster, just like Boston Market. And Truett was sitting about where you are. And Truett was at the other end of the table, and I could tell Truett was not excited about what Dan was talking about. And so at one point in the conversation, very uncharacteristic for Truett, excuse me for just a second, he said, ladies and gentlemen, he banged his fist on the table. He said, ladies and gentlemen, I am sick and tired of hearing you talk about getting bigger. He said, we need to get better, because if we get better, customers will demand we get bigger. So as you might imagine, the entire conversation changed at that point. We stopped talking about getting bigger, and we started talking about getting better. And this was about 92 or 93. Boston Market had declared that they were going to be $1 billion business by the year 2000, which was unfathomable to the people at Chick-fil-A that they could do it. And so anyway, fast forward to the year 2000. Guess what was happening with Boston Market? Who said that? Is that you? Bankrupt. That's a 2-sandwich answer, yes. Because if you're bankrupt, you need one for your banker and one for you. But they were in bankruptcy. Guess what happened at Chick-fil-A in the year 2000? $1 billion business for the first time. We hit the very goal they had set, but we did it by focusing on getting better instead of bigger. So I could spend all night unpacking this for you, but let me at least unpack a couple lessons I took from this. One of the lessons I took from it is we live with the illusion that investors fund our business. You know, we're taught that in business school and that kind of thing. We're taught, you know, that the purpose of a business is to maximize shareholder value and all this stuff. So we focus on the shareholders and the owners and that kind of thing. But here's what I learned. I don't care how much money an investor or a banker or a VC throws at your business. If customers don't throw more money at your business, you will be out of business. So ultimately, customers are the ones that fund your business. And if most businesses figured that out, they'd spend a whole lot more time focusing on customers than investors. And they'd spend a whole lot more time focusing on creating customer value than worrying about shareholder value. And ironically, if they would do that, the shareholders would be extremely excited at the result. They may do $7 million in a $700,000 business. Here's another lesson I learned. When you're trying to force growth, I'll use Boston Market as an example. Let's say they were going to Dallas and they decided, and this is literally the way a lot of companies do it. They say, we're going to open 60 locations over the next 2 years. And if you're going to open 60 locations over the next 2 years, any of you that know anything about real estate will know this. You'll quickly run out of A+ locations, and you'll move to B locations and B- locations and C locations and D locations. And you might open 60 locations over 2 years, but you will not open 60 A+ locations. And so they open their 60 locations and then they declare victory and they talk about how big we've gotten and they're still on the cover of every magazine. Everybody's talking about how big they are. But here's what happens. The minute you open 60 locations in 2 years, you have to staff those 60 locations. And guess what happens there? You might start with a couple A+ people, but you quickly move to B, B-, C, D. So now all of a sudden, you've got B, C, D locations being run by B, C, and D people. And guess what happens? Bankruptcy. It looks good in the short run, but it implodes on you in the long run. There's so many other things I could tell you about that, but time will not allow. So maybe if Matt is nice enough to invite me back sometime, we'll talk about some of the rest. But I think you get the gist. And this whole idea of leveling up and taking things to the next level. See, the next level is being better, not bigger. Real next level, sustainable next level you'll be proud of.
One more time.
I said, the next level is getting better, not bigger. And if we'll get better, who will demand we get bigger? Customers. And who really funds your business? Customers. Bingo. That's what most businesses miss. In fact, we're going to have to reward you with a chicken sandwich here. That was the right thing to emphasize right there. Okay, so let me tell you about the third one. And sadly, we don't have too much more time, but the third one was born during the last crisis. Anybody remember what the last crisis this country faced? 9/11. What's that? Well, yeah, 9/11. I didn't think about that one. But 2008, what was going on in 2008? Housing, banking, all that. Yeah, exactly. You're going to get 2 sandwiches. Are you 2 together? Yes. Oh, then she's going to get 2, and then the boss can decide if you get one. Yeah. So, 2007-8, we had a huge financial crisis in this country with banks and housing and all. There was a bust on all that stuff, and we were in a lot of trouble. And it was a lot like the pandemic. For those of you that don't remember it or didn't live through it, it's a lot like what this year has been like. Businesses were closing. People were being laid off. The future looked awful. It was a scary time to be in business. And a lot of our competitors had the natural reaction. Most of our competitors, what they were doing is they were laying people off and they were cutting back on people's hours. And it's just like what you see this year. How many people are getting laid off and we're cutting back on hours, and they see a pandemic, a challenging time like this, as an opportunity to cut back and go on defense. But the most progressive companies, the smartest companies, to me, the wisest brands see a time like this as an opportunity to advance, not retreat. So let me tell you what the story at Chick-fil-A, this is one of the all-time greats. So Dan and Truett decided during that 2007-8 period, when we were in big trouble financially as a country, and even at Chick-fil-A, they had this crazy idea that this was the time we needed to create a new service program. Like, take our service to the next level, to use the language we're talking about. And no one thought it was a good idea. You know, they wanted to spend millions of dollars creating what has now been dubbed as second mile service. And honestly, nowadays, a lot of people would because it worked out pretty well, they'd take credit for it. But I lived through it. Almost no one thought it was a good idea. They all thought Dan and Truett were crazy. And again, being the attorney, here's the argument you could make against it, and here's the argument that was being made against it. No one goes to a fast food restaurant for service. If you want a good service, what kind of restaurant would you go to? Yeah, white tablecloth, yeah, fine dining, that kind of thing. Where not only do you pay $30 for that same chicken breast that you pay $3 for at Chick-fil-A, but you tip to pay for the service. So you're paying $30 for the, and you're paying a tip and all that. So if you wanted service, go to a place where you pay for service. No one goes. Almost by definition, where's the last place you would go for service? Fast food. Because all you do is you want your food fast. It makes no sense to invest in a service program, especially in the middle of a time like this. A time like the one we're going through. Millions of dollars. Oh my goodness, people, all the leadership at Chick-fil-A thought we are crazy. We're going to go out of business if we do what the leaders want to do here. Well, it turns out they were crazy. They had a crazy good idea. Because we did create what's now known as the second mile service initiative. Here's the other argument I would have made against it. At the time, a lot of the people in our organization were saying, no one comes to fast food for the service. And some of you may be old enough to remember, there was a presidential candidate a number of years ago who was famous for the slogan, "It's the economy, stupid." Well, the Chick-fil-A version of that at the time was, "It's the food, stupid." People are coming and they're paying their hard-earned money for the food, stupid, not service. So we're wasting our time, we're wasting our money. It's the food, stupid. And that was the argument that was being made. And it was a good argument. So anyway, fortunately for us, Truett and Dan could play the ownership card, and they said, we're going to do this. And here's the cool thing about Chick-fil-A culture. As much as everyone was against this idea, the minute the decision was made, all that passion turned from being against it to we're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. So we spent millions of dollars creating what's now known as the Second Mile Service Initiative at Chick-fil-A. And what's fascinating is, nowadays, Chick-fil-A is more known for the service than the food. That was unimaginable at the time. Unimaginable. It's not the food got any worse. The food is still as good, but we're more known for the service. And we have more people telling us, I come for the service, than the food. It's the experience. Who said that? Yeah, it is. It's customer experience. We're an experience economy, some would say. So, crazy as it sounds, people are more willing to pay for the service that they didn't ask for, they didn't expect. And kind of like the furniture business. Maybe you're in the furniture business, but maybe you're in the service business too. And maybe service could become as important to your organization as the furniture. So, here's a couple things that are interesting about this. One of the subsets, and by the way, we spent millions of dollars. We created the program. We flew people to Atlanta, Georgia from all over the country to come get trained on the program. We spent all this time, money, and effort, launched it while most of our competitors were laying people off, firing people, cutting back. And then when we came out of 2007 and 8, oh my goodness, you can't imagine the sales and the profits that came as a result of that. But here's another interesting little tidbit. One of the subsets of the second mile service initiative is we decided to reinvent the drive-through experience. The drive-through experience had not been reinvented for 50 years. Been the exact, you pull up to a box and it's like, you can't understand what we're saying. We couldn't understand what you're saying. It's this terrible experience that had never been reinvented in 50 years. But we decided we're going to reinvent it. And now we got people out with iPads and all that. You guys have all seen that. All that was born during the Second Mile Service Initiative 2007-8. But here's what's really interesting. Now that we're going through the pandemic, for most of this year, most Chick-fil-A's had to do what? Close what? Close the dining room. So, several people said that. Close the dining room. You know what saved us in this pandemic? The work done in the last one, the drive-through. And now it looks like NASCAR, doesn't it? It's like 3 lanes and, the pit crew is out there. And, well, a lot of our competitors are 10 years behind us at this point in that. But everything you're seeing in the drive-through and maybe you've appreciated about the drive-through was born during the last pandemic in 2007-8. So these challenging times can many times become the birth of something great. So here's what I want to just challenge you with. And one last thing I want to share with you. We call that second mile service. But Matt has made me aware of a name you may be familiar with. Anybody can tell me what Stanhope is? Okay, Stanhope is what? Yeah, your private label. Maybe it's your next level of furniture, right? Yeah, it's the middle name of the founder, but it's also your next level of furniture, right? What about if you guys as a group said, you know what we're going to create? Instead of second mile service, we're going to create the Stanhope level of service. And it's going to be above and beyond. Because here's the nature of second mile service. What we said is, and here, let me give you another Chick-fil-A. You can share that with somebody, your bright young lady. I may hire her away from you, Matt. Be careful. So here's what I would challenge you to think about. At Chick-fil-A, we have a strategy we call the raving fan strategy. We say we don't try and generate sales. We try and create raving fans of the company. Because if we'll create enough raving fans of the company, sales will never be a problem. And the first part of creating raving fans is what we call operational excellence. We need to do what people expect with excellence. So operational excellence is kind of the foundation. It's the base. Most of our competitors don't even do that or get stuck there. But we said second mile service is the next level of this. It's giving people what they don't expect with excellence. See, we've got to give them what they do expect with excellence, but second mile is what they don't expect with excellence. And so maybe your Stanhope level of service could be, how do we give people what they don't expect? We're going to give them everything they expect, but how do we take it to the next level? Now, I had a presentation that I was going to show you with some videos and that kind of thing, but we're not able to get to that. But I brought one little thing I want to read to you, just literally an example that just showed up in my inbox a day ago. This would be an example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to have to put on my glasses, unfortunately, to read this, sadly. So, literally every day at Chick-fil-A, we talk about our goal is to improve the stories. That every life is a story. And our goal every day is to improve the stories of those we do business with. And we don't think about them as, a $20 bill and they're walking in and how do we get $5 more? We think about this is somebody who's got a life, who's got a story. How do we improve their story? And so every day we have over 1 million people that walk into our restaurants. And the challenge is, how do we improve their story? And I just thought this was I could share story after story, but this is one literally just happened a day or two ago, so I thought it would be appropriate. And it happened not far from here. So this is a note we got back from a customer. It said, I want to brag on team member Dave Warner. I called your location, Marsh Landing FSR in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, and requested a catering order for our son's 28th birthday. We usually go out for dinner as a family on special occasions, but unfortunately we're unable to do this due to me being on the transplant list for a kidney and having to quarantine because of COVID-19. I told Dave our situation, and he went above and beyond to the Stanhope level of service. To deliver breakfast and a birthday cake that he had signed, Love, Mom and Dad. We had no idea he was bringing a birthday cake. I cannot emphasize enough the positive impact that Dave has made. I've never experienced this from any other organization. See how it worked? They were just expecting a catering order to be delivered, but he was smart enough to say, hey, these people are trying to provide a birthday for their son. They're not able to get out. I'll go get the birthday cake and sign it from them. That's next level. That's where, and it's simple and it's easy, but it happens over and over and over again. And we have people that's the way they think, and what their goal is. He was saying to himself, how am I going to improve the story for this family? Not how am I going to sell them another $5 worth of food? Because imagine now, is this family going to go anywhere else? Yeah, they'll be so loyal. And what else are they going to do? They're going to tell other people you should be doing business with Chick. See, they become your unpaid sales force. When you word of mouth advertising, always been the best. When you take it to the next level, your customers become your sales force and they're unpaid. So I got so much more I could share, but I think time is limited. But let me, if I can, Matt, I just want to share one last thing. Sure. COVID bursts. This COVID time has birthed a lot of things. I want to share with you one I'm very proud of. I've got 3 children. My middle son, Nick, decided to use this time because he actually got laid off from his job. He was working for a marketing firm that was connected to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and they did all the Falcons games, Atlanta United, and that kind of, and obviously there's not a lot of event marketing going on. So, but let me show you what he did, and I think it's ironic based on the title that you guys wanted to talk about tonight. So one of the things he loves doing is he and I had a special relationship along with my younger son where we wanted to enrich our father-son relationship, and we created a thing when he was 13 called Champion Tribes, which was kind of a rite of passage into adulthood, and he literally created a version of that for other dads to do. But during the pandemic, what he was finding is there are a lot of parents who want to enrich their relationship with their kids but have a hard time figuring out how to do it. So he kind of took a cue from the fact that our family loves to play board games. Ironically, all of our kids play so much time on screens. They have so much digital time on screens that for them, a digital game is not very unique or different, but an actual board game is really unique and different. So he took the opportunity to create what he called the Level Up game. And what it is, it's a game that takes your relationship to the next level. So over the course of playing the game, the way you get to the next level in the game is you ask each other questions. And you get to know each other better. And so even when the parent loses, they win. So it's designed for parents to play with their kids and make getting to know each other a fun experience. And they're really thoughtful questions, really interesting questions. So by the time you finish playing, it's like, wow, I know my child so much better. And their child knows their dad or mom so much better. So, and I thought it was fascinating when Matt told me that the theme for tonight was Level Up. My goal was to bring you guys some of these tonight. Unfortunately, they are still in transit from the manufacturer, but I'm going to send some to you. Matt and I are going to work it out. I'm going to send some to level up your holiday, and maybe even what I'd love to do is send you a few that you could give to customers. I thought this could be your start of the Stanhope experience. Somebody comes in, buys some furniture, you see they have some kids, give them one of these. This may enrich their life as much as the furniture will. And you could write a little nice note that, hey, I noticed you had some kids and I want to make an investment in your relationship with your kids, and here's a little way to do it. So anyway, Matt and I will work out a way to get you a few of these, but I thought this was perfect for tonight because if we're going to level up, we're going to take our service to the next level, not only would this be a great idea for you and your own kids, but this would be a way you can invest in the lives of your customers who have kids. So now, Matt.